Hey folks, we got Richard with us again today. We're in Princess Road, Croydon, because we're going to follow on from the previous video that we did not far from here. And in this video, we're basically going to walk around the perimeter of the cemetery, but we're covering a number of different roads around there. Looking banghole area at more depth. We're going to cover Pawson's Road. We're going to look at some of the pubs that have been and gone. And also, I'm going to talk to you about a family connection with this area that I only recently discovered. Without further ado, let's get on our way. So our story begins here in Princess Road. This is how it obviously looks today. We've also got this wonderful image that Richard supplied of the first 4 properties here in Princess Road. So we had a pub on the far corner.
We did.
And there were 4 other properties ultimately owned by the Pawson family.
Yes.
And the picture on the far left, the shop above of which Richard was born. I found the original ad from when this property was built and put up for sale, dating back to May 1867, and it lists the property details, estimates an annual rental of about £200 per annum. Now Richard's family came along a bit later, but it's nice to get that reference point of when it was first built and establishing part of this area. Most of the building took place around the 1860s. So we're basically going to take a walk along. There'll be a number of stopping points, even in this first section, as we go along towards Grace Road, along to Beulah Grove, and where Foster Road and Wilford Road once were. So quite a bit of stopping, quite a bit of telling of stories. In the enclosure map, it shows that this area was divided up from what was originally Croydon Common. The best detail we've got really came in about the middle of the 19th century in the tithe map, when one William Pawson owned not only this particular area we're in now, but all the land in the White Horse area and up to and including the grounds of Beulah Spa. In around about the 1850s, 1860s, obviously decisions were taken to put this land up for sale. Big growth area, railways, industrialisation in the Victorian times, and this was ripe for building housing, and that's how this area grew. So Grace Road is not far into Princess Road, Richard, and this on the corner then was where your property was.
Yeah, so this was the number 4 Princess Road, which was the shop that I was born and lived first part of my life in. It was the family business. It's actually, there's a nice picture of my dad holding my sister in the side entrance. Behind the shop, there was like a big outhouse shed kind of thing, which is where the stock for the shop was kept. And we used to play in there as kids. As you went down Grace Road, there were houses on either side, and then at the end there was a cut through back into Queen's Road, and that's where there were stables, and the stables belonged to the Regelous, who had a greengrocers around here, and that was at a time when, you know, you would still see horses and carts delivering certain things. So people of our generation might remember the coal still being delivered by horse and cart, and even obviously the rag and bone man would come around with a horse and cart. So not all businesses, but there were still businesses that used horse-drawn carts to deliver their goods in those days.
Now this area has seen quite a few road name changes over the years. One of the early ones was in August 1862, where the newspaper reported that the road from Windmill Road to Bensham Lane changed from Cemetery Road to Queen's Road, and the road from the cemetery to Whitehorse Road to be Prince's, so that's Prince ''S, and later Princess Road, which is where we are now. But that's also the case for Banghole itself, because it was originally Wheat Road and Linden Road, Wheat Road being Foster Road, Linden Road being Wilford Road. The Linden Arms, some of you may remember references at least to that pub. So we've got this first block of newer properties here. These were all built, I think, in about the 1950s, when this whole area was developed. Then there's a section of houses, or a terrace of houses, that goes slightly further back, and then another section a bit further down that's slightly further forward again. This particular property here, this is number 11 Princess Road, features in a lovely photo we've got from when the area is being developed. And if you'd have come and stood where we are here and now with the camera, we are actually on the entrance to what was Foster Road. And a bit further down will be the entrance to what was Wilford Road. We'll talk a bit more about them when we get around the corner, but lovely to see that picture showing this new property at the time and the original properties of Foster Road just a bit further back. And again, these roads both joined Wimwell Road to Princess Road, Foster and Wilford, or Wheat and Linden, because that's what they were previously known as.
And the other thing that we know about number 11 to number 13 Princess Road is that that was a lodging house, and it was known as the Italian lodging house because it was owned and run by an Italian family called the DeMarcos.
This was a place where it was good to just get your bearings, get your feet on the ground, weekly rent of whatever the payment was.
Yep.
And, you know, in the census returns at the time, many of the occupations were very manual, building labourers and carpenters, joiners, that kind of thing.
And it was at a time when people didn't, there wasn't the degree of home ownership that there later was. Lots of people lived in lodging houses or rented their property. In Croydon, there were 9 lodging houses, and it would go through and tell you where they were and how many people were living in each one of them. When George Orwell was writing Down and Out in Paris and London, he talks about all the different places that he stayed, and he, in that book, specifically mentions that the best municipal lodging house that he ever stayed in was the one in Croydon, which was in Pit Lake. It might have been, say, I don't know, £1 a night, but if you're going to stay the whole week, it was 6 shillings or something like that.
Discount.
Yeah, you got a discount. But he gave it the thumbs up. So in terms of like what would nowadays be a sort of TripAdvisor thing, he rated very highly the municipal lodging house in Croydon as being a model of good practice.
As endorsed by George Orwell.
As endorsed, yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Now, in the middle of the camera opposite, slightly into the sun, is 15 Princess Road. That is where the Queen's Head pub was. And that was also on the corner of Wilford Road, formerly Linden Road. So we've got this whole terrace here where basically we've got the 2 main roads that represent the Bangole area. So at the end, where we've just been, that was Foster Road, Wheat Road, and then here, 15, pub on the corner, Queen's Head, that was Wilford Road. The licence was passed over in 1955 to the Newton Arms, and so that closed down, and really that date ties in with when this was redeveloped, which was in the late 1950s. So here we got 16 to 19 Princess Road. These are original houses. They're 2 different styles. There's most standard bay window on the right hand side, and then there aren't bays on the left hand side, but they still have obviously Victorian nods in terms of design. And we can see at the very top on the second pair of semi-detached houses, Ashridge Villas 1866. So again, that ties in perfectly with when this area was developed. We've just got some slightly different style properties here. This is on the corner of Beulah Grove, which we're going to head down next. Already quite a mix of properties here. Got the basement flats here, and then a couple of stories up. I would imagine that the style of these smaller properties, probably originally one up, one down rooms. And over on this side, very much the workers' cottages.
And again, Phil, a lot of these would have been rented out, so it wouldn't have been a family house. There would have been perhaps a family in the upper part of the building and another family downstairs, or even, a family in a few rooms.
Like a double pitch roof there. So they sort of perhaps go back further than you might think from first view. We'll come back to Tyrrell in a minute, because I just want to pop down here. And this is one of the things that I noticed when we first walked down here, Richard. It's why are these properties fairly standard style, but they're all stepped down?
And what we're used to seeing, obviously, is tall buildings where they're 3 or 4 stories high, and in the bottom is the basement, and then you think, oh, that's fine. But there's not that you've got a basement in these, it's just that the house is down in a dip.
And I think I know why.
I think you do know why.
So this area was predominantly gravel pits, and the gravel was extracted, and there were some tragedies that happened in the time there were gravel pits. And I think that after the gravel was extracted and they got down to what was a pretty good base to build upon, that's exactly what they did. I'm not a geologist, I'm not a builder, so I'd love to hear what your thoughts, confirmation, challenge might be in the comments. But there's a few situations like this all around this area where we go, and even here. So I know this has been developed a bit more modern, but we're sort of standard street level here, and then down a few steps here, all the way down the rest of Beulah Grove. That's something that, again, maps, LiDAR maps in particular, can help us to see where it goes down. But it's a big feature of this area, all the way back to where White Horse Road Wreck is as well.
What we also know about the gravel pits is when they were just open areas, they were used for different things. Prize fights would happen. So they were like little amphitheatres, I suppose. Those places could be filled with water and become fishing lakes or whatever it might be. So rather than thinking, oh, let's just fill these in, you think, well, we've got a gap caused by the digging out of the gravel, so let's do something in them.
And enterprising and a bit of gambling, make a bit of money.
Exactly, yeah.
So we've got Smock Walk here. The recreation ground is through there, but we're going to go the other way round to get in. And there's another name further down, isn't there, Richard? Ashmill, was it?
Ashmill, yeah. So again, relating to the fact that obviously Windmill Road was called Windmill Road because there were windmills there. And so, you know, the trades relating to windmill. Similarly, the fact that you've got Wheat Road and things like that before the names were changed.
Roughly in this area is where Thomas Wigley and his family in the 1881 census, he lived in windmill cottages. So that makes a perfect reference back to when one of the windmills in this area used to operate, hence the name Windmill Road. So we're heading towards Wilford Road Recreation Ground, and we think these railings are from when it was originally constructed. We think that, don't we?
I remember.
And you remember.
From my childhood playing in what we used to call the playground, which would be, or the swing wreck.
Yes.
And then this open piece of ground, which we used to call Tyrrell Wreck, backing onto Tyrrell Road. Where you'd come and play football or whatever it might be. But then there was the playground with all the climbing frames and various things. Not nearly as safe as things are nowadays.
So that's Tyrrell Road at the end there, and that didn't exist originally, did it, Richard? We're talking when it was originally laid out. So we're standing, try and put some sort of reference. So we've got the fence here.
Yeah.
And we've got a certain alignment. Like, I'm going to swing the camera around again. I think we're standing in Wilford Road.
So yeah,
itself.
So if we were standing here 100 years ago, we would now be standing in not a park, but in one of the two bang-old streets. Around about late 1930s, there were plans then to demolish that area and redevelop the area. Because war came along, all of those plans were shelved until after the war. This was slum clearance.
Yeah.
So although there were strong communities in the Bangor area, the actual quality of accommodation provided was poor and the overcrowding was significant. These places were not healthy, sanitary places to live. Perhaps a tap in a backyard or something like that, no indoor toilet facility, all of the things that we take for granted nowadays. The properties in Wilford and Foster Road didn't have those kind of facilities.
No, and I think also that timeline, so from the Act in 1930, these things always take time to get to fruition. 1939, the list of condemned houses and the addresses, house numbers in this area was published. But of course, as Richard mentioned, we had the war. After that, you've got a shortage of sort of men and materials. So it wasn't really until the 1950s that we actually got to start the construction to what we see today. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out, because I've done a little bit of mapping activity here, because I like to know these things. So I'm going to walk to the sort of middle of the grassed area. So this is where we got the kind of L-shaped elbow of the property. We've got Windmill Road in that direction, we've got the play area there, and then we've got the connecting road that goes through to Queen's Road there. I think we're standing on the exact spot of the Linden Arms. I think this kind of middle section here of the playing field, roughly in line with the road and the L-shaped bit of the houses. Linden Arms, which closed in 1906.
And there is still what we would call the swing wreck or the playground. There was a little pretend shop that was built with a corrugated iron roof on it. And when it rained, those of you that have ever had a caravan holiday will remember the sound of rain on a caravan roof. That sound. Anyway, that was the sound in that shop.
And I'll put a link in the description below. There's a kind of one-page thing that London Borough of Croydon do, which describe this recreation ground, and it mentions what was here before. It mentions that the police would only ever come in here in twos at least, and that there was kind of an alleyway between the two roads where different types of gambling would go on. It gives you a feel for it. I mean, we did say even in the first film, it was a rough area, but also what's come across to me so much through doing the detailed research is it really was a community. And at the end of the film, I'm going to read out something that I found in the newspapers that sums it up perfectly, so stay tuned for that. It's not easy to see. This is Budby Cottages, and I found a reference in the newspaper from 1872. Someone was a witness to a crime and mentioned that they lived at number 2 Budby Cottages. And then we got this one, this is Exeter Villas. And then Copson Lodge, which was a laundry. It's Copson Laundry. A few newspaper references to them advertising for staff. And whilst this would have been a dedicated laundry, the reference to laundress pops up many times on the census returns. It was one of those jobs that people did to make a bit of extra money, and also because many Victorian women hated doing the laundry. Just noticing here, Richard, again, we're stepping down. So this is the first time that we really see this in this road, noting that some of it was obviously developed earlier. And I don't know as part of that development whether they raised the level, but I think it's safe to say that we see a complete mixed bag all the way along here.
But going down because of the, this is where the gravel pits would have been. Yeah.
And there were stories about obviously the inherent dangers to the gravel pits. We saw about, sadly, some kids drowned and that kind of thing, and they were looking for them to be fenced off. The number 36 was a shop.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it, and there were quite a few of those sorts of shops that weren't really a shop. It was almost like someone's front room, and they had a few things in there, and it was kind of opened when the person that lived there felt like opening it. And if you walked past and it was open, you'd nip in, and they might have a few bits and bobs in there, might be some sweets or whatever. But it wasn't, so it was kind of like another way that people had of making a few bob.
But that was the same for beer houses as well, wasn't it? So it was easier to get a licence just to sell beer and to convert your house, maybe knock a couple of rooms together and convert your house to become a beer house than it was to get the full licence where you'd have to go up before the judge or whatever and be able to sell spirits and the like as well. So there were beer houses galore. One tragic accident took place where someone was doing a kind of their own conversion of a property into a beer house. A wall collapsed and 2 young girls died. So these tragedies happened when people kind of were, I suppose, looking for ways to make a bit of extra money.
Yeah, and I think that was it, that people, I mean, they talk about it nowadays, don't they, about having a side hustle. People always had a side hustle because, you had to make ends meet. And if you did that by having a couple of rooms in your house where you sold beer or had a shop, or you took in laundry or whatever it was that you did to make a few extra bob to make ends meet.
Basically, all of this new section then, Richard. Yeah. So we got this, one of the more modern sections of this road all the way along to where the railings are at the end. That's the car park for these properties here. But that marks that whole boundary then of the school.
The school.
And the boys' club.
Boys' club. So my dad was born in this road. He worked in the family shop at 4 Princess Road. But later on, he had a job in the building when it was the education stores. So my dad would have worked here from probably the early 60s to when he retired, age 65, in the late 80s. So certainly until the late 80s, it was still the Croydon Education Authority's stores where, you know, all of the chairs and the tables and the books and all of the things that related to all the schools in Croydon were kept. One of the reasons I know this was a boys' club is because I've got some photos of my dad and my uncle Phil when they attended the boys' club and when they went away on camping trips. The other reason I know is because here is my dad's billiards medal from the Croydon Boys Club Championship 1937-1938. All along on the left-hand side as we've been walking along Princess Road is the cemetery. So that's why the houses are numbered numerically, odd and even, one after the other, rather than either all odd or all even.
And we've got some A's, you know, numbers and A's in some of them, won't be along here.
But it's not like the twos are on this side, the odd numbers on one side. It's all on one side because
it wraps around the cemetery.
Yeah, and right from when the places were built, they were built round the cemetery. So it made sense that they were just numbered, you know, numerically without any odds and evens splitting up. And then on the left, you can see the original, very nice brickwork.
Yeah, I can't leave this uncovered, unvideoed. This cutaway here then, is that decorative or functional? Was there a gate or something along here?
So obviously on this side, the old brick walls have been taken down and they've been replaced with railings. On the other side, on the Pawson's Road side, you've still got the brick wall. And I remember the gate that we used to go into in Princess Road had these kind of, I don't know what you call it, column or whatever
pillars.
It might be, pillars. And obviously the gates would have been affixed to those.
Almost like little gargoyle style things there. Yeah.
A very nice thing.
And then we've got a modern development here.
I remember this as being like a yard. And there were lots of these sort of like light, not even industrial, there'd be like a yard for a builder's yard or something like that, just where, you know, people would leave their lorries and their things like that. And then here we are on Mayo Road.
Now I'm just going to get an angle over here. So Acacia Cottage.
And Fern
Cottage. Acacia and Fern. And there's a little story to this place, isn't there, Richard?
I know Acacia Cottage reasonably well, but I never went in the front entrance. So I know this as being Backtrack Recording Studios. And I know that because I recorded in here in the 1980s. So the bit that you can see here as you walked in would be the mixing room, or the control room was on the left. And then you went further forward into the live room, which had a very nice Yamaha piano in it, but also that's where you put your drums and other bits and pieces. Yeah, and I've still got track sheets and multi-track tapes and things from when this was Backtrack Recording Studio. And we recorded things in here that ended up being on one of the first singles that was ever released that I was involved in. So yeah, I've got and we spent quite a lot of time in here.
And we've got some details we can put in the description.
Yeah, absolutely.
To follow up on.
There you go, see? So, and there may be other people who can remember this from being Backtrack Recording Studios.
We've got the Pawson's Arms here. Very famous Crystal Palace pub. Lots of eagles and palace references all over. Opened in 1869, so again ties in with that 1860s period when this whole area is being developed out. After the cemetery opened in 1861, and again it was growth times, industrial revolution. And now we've entered Pawson's Road from Mayo Road.
We mentioned also the Queen's Head pub that was closed, the Linden Arms pub that was closed.
The Palmerston, I think, was just down there a bit. Yeah, that's
and then on the corner of the road was the Princess Arms. You also had the Four in Hand. The Fisherman's Arms was in the Mill Road. So around this area, there would have been, you know, at least a dozen pubs, and probably only one of them still open.
Yeah. We're looking at 94 Pawson's Road, and this property was occupied by the Regelous family. So David and Eliza Regelous came from Saffron Walden. Initially they lived at number 18 Windmill Grove, and that's where my great-granduncle Frank William Regelous was born. That gave me my one connection with this area, and again this house, number 94, gives me another connection. Now, my great-great-grandfather David died quite young, and about a year or so after he died, my great-great-grandmother Eliza was advertising from this house a laundress service with good drying ground out the back. And I was so pleased that I could see that connection. Now, they moved into different houses in the area. As I say, started at Windmill Grove, went here. They lived at Lahore Road for a while and a couple of other places. They ended up at 55 Saxon Road, just up the road from here. That's a house I know very well. It's where my great-grandmother lived. Many, many happy memories of visiting there. Whenever I discover a house that I've got any form of connection with, the first thing I do is look it up online. Does it still exist? 94 Pawson's Road, still here.
Another lost pub.
Another lost pub. So this was the Gladstone. And really, it wasn't open that long as a pub. Still looks like a pub, the design of it. Very, very grand. Obviously, the Victorian styling there. So, yeah, opened in the similar time period. And there was an advert for sale as property, I think Gladstone Mansions, in 1912. So it didn't even make it as far as the Great War, albeit the Linden Arms didn't either. So,
No.
So we think nowadays there's such a change and a lot of pubs are going, but it was certainly still a problem then. I mean, they were probably competing with some of these informal beer houses as well, weren't they, Richard?
Yeah, and as we said, within walking distance, there were probably a dozen pubs around here. People had their loyalty to their local pub, and all of these different pubs would be competing for customers.
It couldn't really be anything else, could it?
Very grand.
Yeah. I guess you would have had your, pub name in the middle there, and
Yeah.
some kind of picture, a sign maybe, and then perhaps the main entranceway right in the middle. But it's been residential way longer than it was a pub.
And I suppose above, when it was a pub, you'd have had function rooms, or you might have been a place where you could lodge for the evening.
Yeah. Many options around here. So here's one that has been and gone, the Lion, closed officially, I think, in 2020. And this is, I suppose, more akin to some of the sites we see nowadays.
Yeah.
Where pubs just haven't really survived post-COVID.
And I remember this one having a little micro brewery out the back at one stage, which might have been called the Lion Brewery or something like that. But again, the building just sitting empty. At the end of the roads here, you've got the Newton Arms, which has been converted into housing, but this one's just been boarded up and left for some reason.
So this is the DeMarco grave. So we spoke about the DeMarcos earlier, looking after the lodging house, 11 to 13 Princess Road. Bereavement team at Croydon located this for me. Antonio and Antonia, both buried here. So I mentioned earlier that I would close with a letter that I read that summed up the whole bang hole setup. So I'm going to read that to you now. This was from the Croydon Times, 21st of January 1955, and it's headed Tough but Generous. Another letter comes from Mrs. J. Smith, née Ginny King, of New Malden, who relates some of her memories both of Wilford Road and the adjoining Forster Road. The people were rough and tough, but their hearts were big and made of gold, she says. No beggar or busker would be turned away from Forster Road empty-handed. The saying, the poor help the poor, was put into practice here. They would close a deal with a handshake, and their word was their bond. Their donkeys and ponies were clean and well fed. Their animals always came first. Yes, they would fight amongst themselves, but if one fell on hard times, the others would rally round and help out. When these people had a ding-dong party, they really went to town. Back was push the furniture, and then it was knees up Mother Brown with plenty to eat and drink. It was a grand free-for-all, adds Mrs. Smith. By the way, Croydon Town Council next Monday will be discussing proposals for constructing a small park on the former slum quarter at Banghall, which has been cleared and redeveloped. Shades of the tough types of former days. A park in Banghall, indeed. So for me, that just summed up the whole spirit of the place, really. The community aspect, people helping out one another, and I love the whole scenario of pushing the furniture back and having a knees up. Wonderful. So that is what this is all about to me, this understanding that I've gained of Banghall. We've shown you the history, we've shown you the layers, we've shown you how the roads were renamed, we showed you where they were, where the pub was, and hopefully given you a really good insight into this area, and of course shown you some of the other aspects nearby as well. So once again, I will thank you, Richard, for your invaluable knowledge of the area and your help in the research, because we had quite a bit of research to do.
We had a lot of research, and it was great. It was very interesting and rewarding work to do, yeah.
And really, you can only kind of scratch the surface. We can't really go into the depth we perhaps like to on these. There's content here that would make for a great talk, so we are considering putting one of those together. But thanks once again for coming along and joining with us on this journey. There may be further follow-ups, because as we find stuff out, we feel we want to find out more. So there might be other kind of sub-stories to cover. We'll see how that goes. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit subscribe. If you like the video, please hit like. If you'd like to support me with a small monthly payment, please hit join. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.